Hi friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. I know you're probably all stuck inside right now, and while some of you may think that this is the absolute worst, you can't wait to get outside and be around other people, some of us may be loving this more than anything and just love isolation and love being by yourself and being able to read all of the books and do all of the things that you can just like do by yourself in your house. So I thought I would share some isolated books with you, like books that make you feel very isolated while you're reading them. So if you're already feeling very isolated and it's bothering you, I don't recommend these books to you. These are for people that are absolutely loving that isolated feeling and want more of that in books. So I have a stack of books here for you. If you're looking for books to help you escape reality, escape your bubble, get outside and play in the sunshine and go to places that you may be able to not visit right now, check out my other video, which I will have linked in the card, and that is books to help you escape reality. But today's books are all about isolation. I have a variety of genres here. Let's go ahead and jump into the books. The first one I have is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torr. I'm still looking for more books in this trilogy. I really loved the first book. I don't know if I loved it the best. It's been a while since I've read it, but like every time I read it, I want more. So A.R. Torr, if you're out there, I want more books. A.R. Torrey, I think that's how you say it, but I want more books. This is about our main character that has self-isolated herself into apartment 6E, and that's because she has this urge to kill people. So she's a cam girl, so you get to see the cam girl side of things. It is a little spicy, so if you're not into that, I would steer clear of this book. But yeah, basically totally 100% isolating herself so she doesn't go on a mass murder spree. Very interesting, very fast paced, absolutely loved it, and like I said, self-isolation story. So and next story I'm going to recommend is the thriller The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. Again, I think this is like a controversial author, not really 100% sure. But this is an isolation story because Anna Fox lives alone. She's a recluse in her New York City home, unable to venture outside. And she sees something happen, you know, across the way, and she's stuck in her house, so she can't really do too much about it. Yeah, isolated again in a house for reasons. Next one, you know this wouldn't be an isolated recommendation if I didn't mention this book. It's one of my favorites of all time, and that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I absolutely loved this story. I've talked about it a ton, but basically this girl's trying to go home, but she gets stuck at this rest stop because of this massive snowstorm, and while she's there, she sees a girl in a cage in the back of a van, and since there's only a very few people stuck at this rest stop, she's trying to figure out like whose van is it, why is the girl in there, what's going on, help her escape, and all of this. This is very high paced and very like fast moving, but it's also like lots of twists and turns, and it's interesting because like while you are isolated, you're more worried about everything else than being isolated, but it is an isolated story. Stop Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This is the first B.A. Paris book that I read, and my friend actually gifted me this book, and I'm so glad she did. I read this in one sitting. I'm absolutely obsessed. None of the other books by B.A. Paris has compared so far. I haven't read the newest release, The Dilemma, yet, but I want to. But anyway, this one is about a husband and a wife and things not being always what they seem on the outside, and while they do come in contact with other people, it's like a purposeful thing and it's still kind of sneaky. Highly recommend. Edge of your seat. From the first page I just knew something was off, and I was absolutely right because it's so creepy, and I still think about that ending every single day, I promise you. Next, this is isolated because there was a contaminant out, and yeah. So this might not be the best if you're really worried about the virus and stuff like that, but Wilder Girls by Rory Powers shows you what happens to a group of girls in a boarding home or a boarding school while there is this like mutation happening, and yeah, it gets kind of gruesome, a little bit of body horror, not over the top, Yeah, they're isolated in their thing. They have to do these trips out, and it's terrible to be outside because of all the wild animals and stuff like that. But if you're looking for an isolated story, up, I chose The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. This one, they are outside, but it's following this hermit as he lives in these woods in Maine, and he isolates himself there, and he only sneaks out like when he has to like get food or things like that, but it's very isolated because it's just this hermit, and it's such a fascinating story, especially considering it's a true story. I have two more for you. The next one isn't really an isolation story, but it feels very much like one. I'm talking about Matchmaking for Beginners by Maddie Dawson. This is one that I kind of want to reread because I read it for a readathon like last year, and I absolutely loved it. I think I rated it like 5 out of 5 stars, but it's basically about this man and woman that get married, and like 2 weeks after they get married they end up splitting up. But in the meantime, his great grandmother that was sick and dying left his fiance wife, ex-wife, her brownstone, and she goes to live in this brownstone, and it just, you completely feel like it's about her at this brownstone and her life, and like the brownstone itself and the occupants of this brownstone. So even though she is able to go out and she goes to cafe and she goes on to walks, and it's not just all set at this brownstone, once you get to the brownstone, like you don't even want to leave the brownstone. You know what I'm saying? So like you're in this building with all these cool like neighbors and stuff like that. So even though it's not like technically an isolation story, I think it's a good one to read while you are isolated if you like being isolated. And the last story that I have for you is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is the first Ruth Ware book that I read, and I absolutely loved it. I love the cover, especially because like the water on the front is actually raised on the cover, and it's just so cool in that way. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This woman is basically stuck on this cruise ship. So I think she goes for like a job or something like that. Reminiscent of, okay, let's see. A journalist who writes for a travel magazine. She's just been given the assignment of a lifetime, a week on a luxury cruise with only a handful of cabins. But then on her first night, something happens with like the cabin next door, and then it's all on this quest to find out like what's happening. But you do feel very isolated because you're like on this small cruise ship, and you're like, what's going on? And she's kind of trapped on the cruise ship, and she's trying to figure it out. So yeah, so those are books that I recommend if you're looking for stories that are kind of isolated or make you feel isolated, but they do make you like escape a little bit, like maybe your isolation. Looking to escape reality, definitely check out the video in the cards above, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped in some way. But that's all for today's video. I hope you're staying safe out there, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye!